right. So welcome everyone to the Right to Community Living, a celebration and training on the asset limit. We are really excited to be here. I think we all could use a celebration. It's really exciting when our work has paid off. So our plan for today is to take a moment to celebrate together about getting the Medi-Cal asset limit increased and to talk about how it's connected to community living more broadly. That just recently, June 22nd, was the 23rd anniversary of the Supreme Court Olmstead decision, where the Supreme Court said that people with disabilities have the right to live in the community and that governments are responsible for providing the supports people need to live in their own homes and in the community and not in nursing homes or other institutions. And also this month is known as Disability Pride Month because July 26th is the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. And this year we're celebrating the 32nd year, 23 and 32. Okay, I can get my numbers right. So it's really exciting that we're all here together to celebrate, and of course to learn more about what is this all about? How do we use it? So a note on access. We have ASL interpreting. We will make sure that our interpreter is spotlighted the whole time. If there's any problem, let us know in the chat if possible. We do have captioning. So if it's not showing up on your screen and you would like it to, you can go to the bottom of your Zoom screen where it says more, and there's probably 3 dots, and you can choose show subtitle, or if it's distracting to you, go to hide subtitle. And as Heidi shared, we have Spanish interpreting today. As you can see, we're recording this, and this is on Facebook Live so that we can really share this so that more people can benefit from it. The chat can be more accessible to some folks and less accessible to others. So we will use it a little bit for key information. And when there's information shared in the chat, we will be sure to read that out on the call so that people will have access to that information. And if the chat is distracting to you, I would recommend you go into your Zoom settings next to the mute or video symbol, and you should be able to choose to disable the chat notifications. And we won't put a lot in the chat, so hopefully that won't be too distracting. Okay, anything else on access or accommodations from anyone? All right, then time to jump in. So we are very fortunate today to have 2 amazing speakers with us. Bea Layugan, who is an advocacy and lawyer referral service specialist at California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform, known as CANNER. And I'm trying to say that slowly for the interpreters. I hope that worked. And Tiffany Huyenh-Cho, who is a senior staff attorney at Justice in Aging. And I should have introduced myself. I'm Jessica Lehman. I use she and her. I work at Senior and Disability Action. And we at SDA are really proud to work with folks at Justice in Aging and CANNER and others to fight for better healthcare and home care for everyone. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Bea to talk about what the heck are we celebrating today?
Thank you, Jessica. So as Jessica said, we're here to celebrate a few things, Olmstead Act, ADA, and then also the asset limit increase. And that's what I will be talking, or Tiffany and I will be talking about that today. I'm really excited about this asset limit increase because it's important, and people, no longer need to spend down as much of their life savings to become eligible for Medi-Cal. And this just goes to show that, the government realizes how widely utilized Medi-Cal programs are, and that you don't necessarily need to be extremely low income to need these services. And so increasing the asset limit definitely allows more access to healthcare, like Jessica said. And then finally, oh, Jessica, I see your question down there. So the asset limit is the amount of resources that a Medi-Cal applicant can have. It used to be $2,000, but as of July 1, 2022, it has increased to $130,000 for a single individual, and then $195,000 for a couple, plus $65,000 additional for each additional family member. And we will go into details in a little bit. But yes, this allows people to keep more money in their pockets and maybe spend on things that they may not have been able to before. So it's very exciting news. And now I'll turn it back to Jessica and Tiffany to talk about how we got to this point.
Thank you, Bea. So before we go on, we need to have a moment to cheer for getting the asset limit increased. How many of you years ago felt like, yeah, we know that only being able to save $2,000, is really hard for people, and it means that people can't have retirement and they can't have a backup plan. So raise your hand or just unmute yourself and shout yes if you thought that was a huge problem.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And how many
Yes, absolutely.
How many of you felt like we were never going to get the asset limit changed? It was such a huge hill to climb.
That one too. Yep.
That was me. Years ago, it was like, oh, we have to keep talking about this, but I don't know when we'll ever get anything done about the asset limit.
Right.
And we did it. So now I need everyone to unmute yourself, and we need a loud cheer, a woohoo, a hip hip hooray, whatever works for you.
Yay!
Oh,
Yay!
And because it's all the people here who made that happen, right? And many more, but everybody here contributed to that. So in addition to cheering in general, I need everyone to give yourself a pat on the back or yell, good job. Good job, everybody.
Great job. Yay.
That one was a little less enthusiastic. Let's try that again. Everyone unmute yourself. And we need a big, good job.
Good job.
Good job.
You did it.
woohoo.
There we go. So when I say everyone here had an impact, it is because for years and years and years, we all have been talking about this, right? In terms of Medi-Cal, in terms of in-home supportive services. We have gone to the state capitol. We have talked to our legislators to say, this is really a problem. It is very hard to get access to healthcare and home care if you have to keep your assets under $2,000, right? We've had events, town hall meetings in person before the pandemic, right? And Zoom meetings where we've talked about long-term services and supports. And we have said the asset limit is a problem. It must be increased and eliminated, right? Are there some people here who have been to Disability Capital Action Day, or one year it was Disability and Aging Capital Action Day? I see a couple nods. Yeah, I know Russell used to organize it.
Yeah. Yep.
And at Disability Capital Action Day, the asset limit always came up, right?
That's right.
Is there anyone
right.
here from CARA, California Alliance of Retired Americans?
I see a few.
Yeah, I was going to let you all yell out, but I know there's some people here from CARA, and they have worked so hard over the years talking about the asset limit. So it's just important. We get so buried in the policy and that we're always fighting against so much that we have to take these moments to recognize people power, that it was all of us saying this needs to change over and over and over again that helped get us to where we are now. And there was a lot of other work, a lot of behind the scenes policy, legal work that got us to where we are now. And Tiffany's going to tell us more about that.
Thank you, Jessica, for a rousing celebration. I love the enthusiasm. It really is momentous occasion, and to think that it was just 5 days ago, July 1st, that the asset limit was increased. And I think, like Jessica mentioned, it really was teamwork. It was advocacy groups, community organizations that submitted support letters to support the various bills that were proposed to eliminate the asset test. There has been, I think, overall a push over the last several years, especially after the Affordable Care Act came into play to, eliminate the asset test because, under the Affordable Care Act, individuals that are on the newer Medi-Cal category created by the Affordable Care Act don't have an asset test right now. That was a significant change for Medi-Cal, but that elimination of the asset test did not extend to older adults or people with disabilities. So this is a big change. It provides parity between those two programs and between these populations. I think it overall ties into the community of advocates that have pushed to, raise the income limit for the traditional Medi-Cal programs, like the Age, Blind, and Disabled program, to eliminate the yo-yo Medicare wobbler issue that happened, and then finally to eliminate the asset test for the remaining Medi-Cal programs. AB 470 was the bill that was passed last year. It was in the 2021-2022 budget session. So that was passed. I know we all celebrated last year. And then this year, July 1st, that new law came into play. So now we're at a point where, new applicants, current applicants, at renewals, they can now have significantly more in assets. Or they don't have to choose between spending down money that they may have just to keep their Medi-Cal. So you don't have to make the same choices that you might have had to just, 7 days ago in June. That, and I think Bea and I will talk a little bit more about what this actually means. Like, what does it mean when we talk about the asset limit being increased for Medi-Cal?
Okay, let me just pull up. I'm just going to have a brief PowerPoint. It'll just be for the details of this, and then I'll take it down again for question and answers. Okay. Alrighty, can everyone see this okay? Yes, okay,
Yes.
great. Great, okay. So as Tiffany said, we are going to be just briefly talking about what the details of the asset limit increase entails. So as we said, just a week ago, the asset limit for Medi-Cal was $2,000 for a single person, $3,000 for a couple. And now it has been increased to $130,000 for a single person, $195,000 for a couple. And then if the Medi-Cal applicant is eligible for spousal impoverishment, the Medi-Cal spouse can keep $130,000 for themselves, while the community spouse or the non-Medi-Cal spouse can keep $137,400 for themselves, which is the CSRA. And then last but not least, and this is in the future, no sooner than January 1st, 2024, the state of California is expected to eliminate the asset test completely. And I just included some graphics here to show the increase of assets. So it started off with 1 stack of money all the way to 2, and then all the way to 3 to sort of signify, the amount of money that someone can keep while on Medi-Cal now. And let me hand it over to Tiffany to, briefly talk about things to consider during these changes?
Yeah. Like Bea mentioned, so the asset limits have increased to that 130,000 if you are a single person. I think one thing that we have been stressing is that, the rules, the Medi-Cal eligibility rules around, what is a countable asset, what isn't, all remain the same. The change is that instead of the limit being $2,000 for a single person can now have up to $130,000 in assets. And again, when we say assets, it's cash that someone might have in a bank account or savings. It could be more than one vehicle. Right now, under the previous rule, only one vehicle is exempt for Medi-Cal asset limit purposes. So if someone does have a second vehicle, if the value of that vehicle is less than 130,000 and they are a single person, they could still remain on Medi-Cal. So that is, again, one of the big changes. So it's just important to remember that exempt and non-exempt assets remain the same. The rules about what is counted for assets remain the same. We also want to highlight that the asset limit increase only applies to California's Medi-Cal program. So this is a change that is specific to California, and it is specific to Medi-Cal only. So there are individuals that may have SSI or supplemental security income. SSI recipients automatically receive Medi-Cal just by virtue of having SSI benefits. But those individuals who are SSI linked still must abide by the SSI Social Security rules and the asset limit of $2,000 for that program. So that's one thing that we definitely want to emphasize, because I think that's one of the questions that often come up from individuals and from advocates. But the changes that we are discussing to the asset limit really only apply to the Medi-Cal program and only Medi-Cal in California. Each state may have different rules, but we're only focused on California today. Similarly to the rules about what counts as an asset, that remain the same. The income rules also remain the same. So income limits for the Medi-Cal categories or different programs will remain the same. Those are not changing by virtue of this asset limit increase. I'll just note that the Medi-Cal income limits do often change every year annually. And that's just because a lot of them are tied to the federal poverty level. So if that percentage increases, the income limits for Medi-Cal can also increase. But for purposes of today, we're really only focusing on assets and the fact that the limit is just increasing from $2,000 to $130,000. The Medi-Cal estate recovery rules also remain the same. Those do not change. So it is possible that for some beneficiaries that receive certain Medi-Cal services, the state may make a claim of recovery against their estate. Those rules haven't changed for purposes of the asset limit. A couple things that are helpful to know. The asset limit increase is, effective July 1st. That was what the budget AB 470 detailed, is that it will start July 1st. So the increased asset limit is not retroactive. In June 2022, the asset limit for that month was $2,000. It's only after July 1st of this year did the asset limits increase. So anyone trying to get retroactive benefits under Medi-Cal for any months prior to July 1st would have to make sure that their assets are beneath the former limits that were much lower. So that's one of the big things. Another big thing is, which programs does this asset limit apply to? It applies to a broad group. It's, long-term care Medi-Cal. If someone has a share of cost Medi-Cal, if it's the age blind and disabled Medi-Cal program, all of the Medicare savings programs that provide financial assistance for Medicare premiums or co-insurance or deductibles. The asset limits are also increasing under this new change. The 250% working disabled program under Medi-Cal is also one of the programs that are benefiting from this new law. It's really the, programs that provide Medi-Cal benefits by virtue of another public benefit program. So CalWorks often provides Medi-Cal health benefits. You would still have to meet the CalWorks rule. And same thing, like I said earlier, about those that have SSI linked Medi-Cal, those folks still need to make sure that they are meeting the SSI rules so that they can keep those benefits as well. And then, oh, perfect, thanks. I just wanted to plug another big change that we're excited about that happened just this past summer. The governor and the legislative body, they passed AB 1900, which also reforms one of the Medi-Cal programs that primarily serve older adults and people with disabilities, which is the Medi-Cal Share of Cost program. And for this program, what it is for individuals that are even slightly over the income limit for free Medi-Cal. If they don't qualify for free Medi-Cal, they may still access Medi-Cal services, but they first have to pay out of pocket what is called a share of cost, a certain amount of medical expenses out of pocket someone must pay before Medi-Cal will kick in and become active. It really works like a deductible, except that that share of cost is monthly. It restarts every month. So under AB 1900, this bill aimed to reform that program and make it so that folks that are on share of cost do not have to spend as much to receive Medi-Cal services, including IHSS or other home and community-based services. A lot of advocates were also part of this push to reform this program. And it, I think, also really increases parity between the other Medi-Cal programs or other healthcare options, such as Covered California, that serve younger or populations or children. So this is a big change. It is implemented in 2025. It's just subject to budget review at that time. So, really excited about another change that's really going to benefit all of the Medi-Cal population.
So I think now we'll open it up to question and answer regarding these changes, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
So this is Jessica. I just want to thank Bea and Tiffany for all the super helpful information and for all the incredible advocacy that you two and your organizations and many others have done to get the asset limit increased and eliminated, and working on the share of costs. So thank you.
Thank you.
There's a few questions that have come up in the chat. I can go ahead and share those, and then we'll invite other people. If the chat is accessible to you, please put your questions there. If it's not, then go ahead and use Zoom to raise your hand. If I don't know that we have anyone on the phone, but if you are on the phone, hit *9 to raise your hand. So 2 questions that I saw. Is it true you can't have food stamps if you have more than $2,000 in the bank? And what about if you own a home?
So I'm not too I may have to look into this a little bit more and get back to you, but it's my understanding that it actually depends on your age. If you are 65 and older, it does not matter what your assets are. I'll have to look back and see for people who are younger than 65. So I can definitely look into that for you.
And I think on the what if you own a home question, Medi-Cal doesn't count a home that someone owns if they live in it. So if it's
Mhm.
someone's primary residence, it's already not counted. It's for those, lucky few that may own more than one home, that second house could be counted in the value of that home. I think one of the significance of the elimination, well, the eventual elimination to the asset test is that owning a home, some people may own a home, but that is worth more than $2,000. But you could have an older adult that has, $2,000 and $2,005 in the bank account and wouldn't qualify for Medi-Cal because of the previous limits of $2,000. Whereas, someone that owned a home that's worth more than $2,005 was able to get on to Medi-Cal. So this sort of evens that field a little bit and provides more equity between, those that might have been able to afford a home in the past as well.
Thank you for that. This is Jessica again. I can't help myself. I have to add on that people have pointed out that the exclusion for a house is part of how we see racism and white supremacy really entrenched in our current system, because it is white people who are much more likely to have their assets in the form of a house. So you can have, if you're in the Bay Area and you own a house, that is hundreds of thousands of dollars. Anywhere in California, your house is going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if you haven't had access to buying a house and your money is in another form, then that counts against you in terms of getting healthcare and home care. So this is not only a win for seniors and people with disabilities, it's a win for fighting racism. And back to the questions. I see that Bill had a question about the Cal Savers program. That's something you two can speak to.
I'm not too familiar with the Cal Savers program, fortunately.
Neither am I.
Bill, do you want to say more about that? Okay, we'll come back to that. And then Ginny Madsen says, will this affect PG&E care or Lifeline phone limits? Because even though they are separate programs with their own requirements, they have been based on Medi-Cal requirements.
I'm not too familiar. I would just say that the asset limits that are increasing only apply to Medi-Cal, but if, say, someone qualifies for the PG&E care program because they have Medi-Cal, that just means that there might be more individuals that now can access Medi-Cal because they fall beneath the higher income limits and can now access the PG&E care program or other programs that are dependent on Medi-Cal eligibility. But I don't believe that other programs are necessarily increasing their asset limits to match the Medi-Cal program.
Thank you. Let's put a pin in this because that may be an easy thing for us to fight to improve, right? Is that they should just follow Medi-Cal. Okay, thank you for that, Ginny. Okay, Bill says, what if property has an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit? Getting very specific.
If it's part of the property itself, it's still considered exempt because I'll have to look at I can pass around the law for that, but as long as it's in the property and it's the person's primary residence, it's considered exempt.
Great, thank you. And we have a question on the phone from a number that ends with 0156. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello. My question has to do with the fact that a sheriff cost does not come effective until 2024.
2025.
So how,
Yeah.
25. So
Mhm.
how's that with asset limit and waiting for a sheriff cost to become usable for somebody? How's that work? Am I making sense?
Tiffany, did you want to? You can answer that one.
Sure. I think you're making sense. I think, advocates that worked on this are disappointed that the governor and the legislative body chose 2025 as the implementation date. That was not what I think advocates pushed for, but it was what they chose in the end. I think advocates are still trying to determine how we can push for a faster implementation timeline. But you're right, that is a very long time from now. It doesn't help people that have a sheriff cost right now because it really is unaffordable and unfair. So you make complete sense, and I think advocates are still just trying to figure out what we can do to push for a faster timeline.
Thank you.
Other questions? Does anyone want to make a comment about this win? What does this mean? How do you feel about this?
One thing, I mean, I think it's just wonderful that it's happening, but also I feel it's a beginning, because maybe some of these other programs like SSI and others that have the $2,000 limit, they were following maybe Medi-Cal. And so maybe you say, well, look, point to this is an increase. So why isn't there an increase in some of these other programs for the asset limits? So I think it should lead to more advocacy for sure, and getting this asset limit increase for a lot more programs and sooner.
Thank you, Betty. And Janine in the chat says, thanks for the new law.
It seems like this will encourage more savings. A lot of people aren't doing any savings at all.
Definitely. I think personally, I get a lot of calls from people who say that they're receiving an inheritance of $50,000 or, whatever amount. And under the old laws, they couldn't keep it and they have to spend it down. So now, people can keep a lot more in their money and can benefit from those instances.
And Ginny says, I'm thinking about all the people I can share this info with, because this is great news for so many. And there are a few, I should spotlight myself if I'm talking. There are some great fact sheets with all of the details about this. And we put them all on SDA's website, and that's in the chat. It is sdaction.org. And I can put a more detailed link in the chat as well. Thank you to Canner and Justice and Aging and Western Center on Law and Poverty for, I said those names too fast, I'm sorry. Justice and Aging and Canner and Western Center on Law and Poverty for putting out all of the fact sheets. So please share those. And we will have some social media posts for everyone to share. If you are on Facebook or Twitter, I don't think we have an Instagram post, but something that you can share to let people know the great news. All right, so we will keep talking and celebrating, but I want to turn it over to Fiona Hinsey from Independent Living Resource Center, San Francisco, to talk about the bigger struggle for community living and specifically the Olmstead decision and the ADA.
So, good evening, everyone. As Jessica mentioned, my name is Fiona Himsey from the Independent Living Resource Center in San Francisco. For those of you who don't know, we are the Independent Living Center covering San Francisco County. For those of you who might be looking for our resources, I'll put up our website in the chat after I'm done talking. But we are delighted to partner with SDA and others on advocacy around home care and community-based living through the IHSS task force, and also Capital Action Day was mentioned earlier. But today, I'm really here to help put this win that we just heard about, right? This great win for home care and access to Medi-Cal programming, et cetera, in greater context. And that really goes to the ADA, which again is celebrating its 32nd anniversary, and it really gives people with disabilities real access to the community in the context of programmatic access, so employment and various government programs and recreation facilities, etc., as well as architectural access, like just the ability of someone in a wheelchair, for example, to get into a building. That's all thanks to the ADA and all the advocates that came before us, and some of you might have been even around to advocate for the ADA, right? That's what's great about the Bay Area. There's so much disability history here, but we really wanted to focus on a particular decision that kind of resulted not necessarily from the ADA, but an element of the ADA was used in its decision. So the Olmstead decision was two disabled women of color who sued the institution that they were living in. And this case made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote the opinion citing that based on the ADA, as I referenced earlier, that the person's institution that they were living in was discriminating against them based on the ADA, and basically keeping them in the said institution, and they should be providing community-based living, and that the state government should be providing those services that are necessitated for one to live in the community, if that is indeed what the person and basically their care team agrees upon, and that again the government should be responsible for providing those services. So a good example would be in-home care and Medicare and Medicaid services, etc. So that is really a foundational decision, and it's been used by the Supreme Court since, and they've reaffirmed it to mean that it applies to all Medicaid funded nursing facilities, as well as anyone who wants to live in what you call a least restrictive community setting. And so we really, as we talk about all these wins that we're getting, we really want to keep these two decisions in mind as kind of a a foundation, because every time we fight for something that is structured around home care and community-based living, we need to be thinking about our our forefathers, and that's really the base for the implementation of Olmstead. And I will note that the promise of Olmstead, while it's a great and foundational decision, the promise of Olmstead really has not been fully realized since 1999. So in 23 years, there are still a lot of people, as we know, that are in nursing homes that would like to be in the community. So as we move forward, we just kind of want to keep that in mind, and that everything that we do should be based in that framing. So I think now I'm going to turn things over to Jessica, who's going to really talk about sort of how we did this advocacy to achieve this, the eventual elimination of the asset limit, and also maybe talk about just some actions that we can take and what might be next in the fight for home and community-based living.
Thank you, Fiona. All right. Did people already know about the Olmstead decision? Is that new to folks? Maybe a little bit of both. So we can see we're making some progress, but we have a long ways ahead. And all the comments in the chat are really powerful about all the work that is ahead of us, right? So we can take this moment as a burst of energy, giving us some momentum to make sure that we can qualify for all of these programs, that we deal with the income limits on Medi-Cal, a lot of different things. So we need to spread the word, right? That's one big thing that we want to do moving forward, is let everybody know that the asset limit is being phased out. So we have a sample post that I'm going to put in the chat. There's no picture here, and I don't know how to put a picture in the chat. But something like this, great news. The Medi-Cal IHSS asset limit, and you can use hashtag for asset limit, increased from $2,000 to $130,000. And then in parentheses, but it's the same for SSI, right? To make sure that people know and don't make that mistake of risking their SSI. Spread the word. So you're encouraging people to share it. And then I tagged Justice and Aging, Canner, and Senior and Disability Action. So who can cut and paste that and post it on your Facebook account or your Twitter account, or I don't know, TikTok, whatever people have. Someone wants to make a TikTok video where you're celebrating the asset limit, maybe. It might be the wrong crowd for that. But who wants to spread the word so that more people know, either if they're on Medi-Cal now, that they can save some money and don't have to hide it under their mattress. Just kidding. We don't talk about how that might happen. And people that aren't currently on Medi-Cal might be able to qualify for the first time and get access to IHSS and healthcare. Oh, great. Bill says, I will create a video from my notes of this meeting to my social media network. Amazing. Jenny says, I don't do social media, but I will make phone calls later. That's great. And who will open up their Twitter or Facebook right now and put out a message saying everybody needs to know about the California asset limit for Medi-Cal going up? Can I get a yay, a yes? I see people looking intently at their computers. I'm going to assume that means you are trying to pull up your social media. And if you're on Twitter, there's a few people that have great posts that you can share. There is Alfred Twu, who is in Alameda County. And I'm gonna, oops, I was trying to put the tag in the chat, Alfred Twu. So Alfred says, this is a huge deal. Previously, Medi-Cal healthcare had an asset limit of $2,000, which made it impossible for people to save up for rent or really anything. It's now $130,000 for individuals, more for families, and goes away entirely in 2 years. And then Nancy Skinner, who's represented here by Nancy Skinner. I think a few people are. So Nancy is in our state legislature, and she says last year's California legislature, California budget increased the current Medi-Cal asset limit for older and disabled Californians effective July 1st and will eliminate the limit entirely on July 1st, 2024. All right, so everybody help us spread the word on that. And I like that point about making phone calls, right? Talk to the older people and disabled people in your life and let them know. So other next steps, I think Tiffany is going to talk about upcoming policy changes.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. So June 1st is when the asset limit was increased, and we're still looking forward to the eventual elimination of the asset test in January 2024. I'm working with the department, as is Bea as well, on the implementation of the increase to the asset limit and the eventual elimination. I think the move to educate, the people that your clients, family members, friends, whoever it is, about this change is really key. The department is not, they don't do a lot of outreach. So I think really spreading the word so that people can actually take advantage of the fact that you can now have more than $2,000 in assets. So folks don't have to make the choice between, spending down their assets so they could remain on Medi-Cal when that's not needed anymore if you're still below 130,000. So I love all the chats and messages about people that are spreading the words. And that's I think the biggest thing that we can do right now. And we look forward to the 2024 elimination. I'm sure all of these organizations will also be putting out a lot more information as we get closer to also spread the word about that change that's coming out.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Betty says in the chat, and Betty Trainer, incidentally, is the president of the board at Senior and Disability Action. She says, putting information in the newsletter that goes out to residents here at my co-op, St. Francis Square Co-op in San Francisco. What a great way to spread the word. Thanks for all the creative ideas. So there's a lot in the chat. Bruce says, are there links available explaining the changes that can be forwarded to others? Yes, absolutely. So that's why I was directing folks to sdaction.org. And specifically, if you go to the page for our healthcare action team, and I put that in the chat, right under where it talks about what is the healthcare action team, you'll see notes on the right to community living, and you'll see multiple fact sheets, and we'll add resources there. We will also add this recording there so that you can share that with others. So as far as what's next, one big thing I've heard people talking about is SSI, right? That unfortunately, the asset limit for SSI is the same, and that is a problem. Not only is it a problem, but I think we're all worried it may be confusing for people to have different asset limits and income limits for different programs, right? So I'm going to ask people to take themselves off mute or get ready in the chat. Who wants to fight to increase and eliminate the asset limit for SSI as well? Betty's the only one.
I do.
It does.
Yes.
All right, there we go. We got a few. It'll take some time. And who wants to increase SSI? Because it's just not enough to live on, right? That's been pointed out multiple times. And it may be a slightly different issue, but it's the same people, right? It's the same problem of not having money to pay the rent. So who wants to increase the amount that disabled people, including older people, can get every month through SSI? It's currently right around $900. Anyone think that's enough to pay rent?
No, I definitely want to fight that.
Yeah, thank you. Was that Bea?
Yes.
Just spotlight you again so we can see you. There you are. Okay. So, all right. So we're going to increase SSI. What else came up? I think someone said we need to increase the income limit for Medi-Cal in addition to the asset limit. Right? What's the income limit right now?
It's 1,564 for a single person, and then 2,106 for a couple.
Not very much.
No.
Okay, so raise your hand, yell yay, put yes in the chat if you want to fight to increase the income limit for Medi-Cal.
Yeah.
Bea's raising all her hands. What else? What are the other things we need to fight for?
Lower rents.
Lower-
Affordable housing,
care for all.
affordable, accessible housing.
Yes, that's
Equally
connected.
affordable, accessible housing, yes. Someone else started to say something? I see internet access, free Wi-Fi, Medicare for all, absolutely. Someone was talking about changing the limits for PG&E's energy programs, right? So we have a lot of work ahead of us. If you are in the Bay Area, Lihia, how can people get involved?
Hay muchas maneras y una cosa que pueden hacer es conectarse con nosotros en SDA. Y pueden empezar a participar en todos los diferentes, las diferentes acciones que tenemos. Por ejemplo, vamos a tener una acción muy importante pronto. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. So you can connect with us. Oh, I have to change the channel.
We can hear you.
Hold on. I need to. Sorry, can you guys hear me now?
We could hear you in
Okay,
Spanish.
sorry, I was in the Spanish channel. So one thing that we can do is to contact us, at SDA and get involved with the different stuff that we are doing. We have different programs and you can be part of that. And we are in San Francisco and also in Oakland. And so you can join the Healthcare Action Team, and Jessica put the information right there. And I'm actually gonna share my cell phone because I cannot be always reach on that phone. Technical difficulties for me. And so I'm gonna give my cell phone right there. And so soon we're gonna have an action, and I wanted to invite you guys to this action. This is gonna be a fun action, so come and participate. We're celebrating Medicare 57th anniversary, and so is a great birthday to be celebrated, and you can get involved with this new action. So okay, I'm gonna describe the flyer is a white background, and it has different messages. On top it says celebrate Medicare 57th birthday, and it says make it a birthday, not a funeral. And then we have a piñata and a vicious man trying to hit that piñata that is full of money, and the piñata symbolize Medicare. And in this action, more information in this action is that we're gonna have food, music, games, and it says the date. When is July 29, where the San Francisco Federal Building at 90 on 7th Street, which is the corner of 7th and Mission. And it's gonna be from 11 a.m. to noon. And you can watch it live in our Facebook, Senior and Disability Action Facebook. And if you want more information, you can contact me at Ligia at sdaction.org or my cell phone 415-912-8643. And on the bottom, we have the message, stop privatization of Medicare. And we have our sponsors, California Alliance for Retired Americans, Senior and Disability Action, Physicians for National Health Program, California, the Movement to End Privatization of Medicare, SF Great Panthers, and SFDSA. OSF is the Older Women League, Healthcare for All. So please come and get in contact with us.
Thank you, Ligia. So there's a lot going on if you're in the Bay Area. Who else is organizing in other parts of the state? Bill says SoCal.
So there's different stuff going on. So we have a campaign for free Wi-Fi. And we have an ongoing campaigns for getting more subsidies for senior and disability and people with disability housing.
Yeah, so there's a lot happening in the Bay Area. I know some.
And can someone else share what is going on in other parts of California?
All right. So also in the chat, Jenny says, is the live stream from today going to be saved? Yes. So this will be saved, and you can either find it directly on Facebook on SDA's site, or we will make sure that it is on the website on sdaction.org, and we'll share a link on social media as well. So another way that folks can take action wherever you are in California or in the country is, I think a lot of people remember when there was a big push for what was called Build Back Better, which was about getting a bunch more money for Medicaid, which would partly go for home and community-based services. And it's not called Build Back Better anymore, but there is still a train moving with funding for home and community-based services. So we need to make sure that our members of Congress do not forget how important this issue is. So I want to invite everyone to call on their member of Congress to support funding for home and community-based services. And the main number to Congress where you can ask for your individual member of Congress is 202-224-3121. And lastly, we want to invite everyone to share your story, right? If you are on Medi-Cal, if you use IHSS, if you can't get on Medi-Cal, you know, whatever your situation is, that it's really powerful to share that as we continue to advocate. So you can take a video of yourself, you can write down your story, send it to Ligia or to me, so we can work on getting that out there. And if you have more questions about the asset limit, how the changes are going to work, what's included, what's not, Bea and Tiffany, I'm going to ask you to tell people who to contact.
I can go first. So Canner provides direct counseling to people who have questions about Medi-Cal eligibility. We don't necessarily help, you fill out the application or anything like that. But if you're wondering if you'll be eligible, if you want to learn more about share of cost calculation, we can definitely help you with that.
And Justice and Aging doesn't provide direct services like Canner does, but we're always willing to answer questions from advocates that have questions about what this asset change means for individuals that are calling on behalf or asking about themselves, and maybe they have a very specific circumstance. I do also refer to the local legal aids that are available in each county that have Medi-Cal expertise and can also answer questions about these changes. And I'll put their information in the chat.
Excellent. All right. So we are wrapping up early. That never happens, but that's how it works when we won what we needed to win, and we get to give ourselves a break before we go on and fight for everything that is next. Don't leave yet. I want to thank Tiffany Huyenh-Cho from Justice and Aging and Bea Layugan from Canner for all of their work, for being here tonight, for sharing such great information. And I want to thank all of our interpreters for American Sign Language and Spanish, and our captioner. And we will email all the information from the chat, as well as a link to the recording, to everyone who registered. So yeah, so be sure to pass that on when you see it. So before we go, I'm gonna take off all the spotlights and have everyone in gallery view. I hope you guys are in gallery view as well, so we can see each other. And I'm gonna ask us to come off mute one more time and do one more big cheer, maybe with our fists up, because we're fighting and we're winning.
Yay!
Yay!
Medicare!
Yay!
Medicare assets increased.
Yay!
Hey, congratulations, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
I had just emailed somebody. I just called someone and sent a message to her about the assets increasing.
Great.
Wonderful. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank
Hi,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone.